What is going on, my true crime fans? Hope you guys are having an exciting weekend. Today is another episode of Joe's Crime Stories, where we get into the latest crime stories that happen in the U.S., or we look into cases that are basically like a documentary, where I break down what happened, my thoughts on it, while just chilling like a regular citizen. If it's your first time tuning in to the broadcast, do me a favor. Go ahead on and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell all the way up top. I have two channels that this is always premiered on. First is my mega channel, Joel Davis Media Network, Joel Davis Media Network. The second channel is Joel's Crime Stories. That's right, Joel's Crime Stories. This is the channel where you can actually hear nothing but the latest crime stories, whether it's dealing with the usual that I dabble in, politics, or everyday people. Also, too, please like this video, share this video, and make sure that you continue to support the channel. Also, too, if you want to support, all my donation links is down below. $5 challenge, please. It helps continue to make the channel grow. So let's get into this. Today's case, we are going to be discussing the Hillside Strangler case. That is right. A lot of you guys who follow me may remember this case. Some of you guys probably never heard about it that are younger than us, but this is a very unique case. Imagine you being a detective back in the late 70s. Thank you, Jen. Jen, do me a favor. Go ahead on and follow me as well on my platforms. Joel Davis Media Network, Joel Davis Media Network. And I appreciate y'all guys, man, listening to me while y'all driving from work or going home. I appreciate that. That helps us make the channel grow. That continue to make me do what I do, because I do it out of the love of the fans, man. So, as I was saying, get back into this. The Hillside Strangler. So imagine, guys, imagine there is a killer on the loose, and this is back in the late 70s, a time where America was used to leaving their doors unlocked, being able to leave your keys in the car, leave your keys outside the car, maybe even outside your door. Because back then, this was where America was like an innocent time. But at the same time, there was a lot of sinister stuff going on that made the world turn into what it is today, where you can't do those things anymore. And one of those key factors is the story of the Hillside Strangler, where for a long time, the detectives thought they were chasing one individual, but it turns out to be two individuals. That is right. And these two individuals are Kenneth Alessio Bianchi and Angelo Buno Jr. That's right. Two men who I am going to break down their early part of their lives, how they are related to each other, and how tying it into this case, how it all started. So right now, I'm about to share with y'all how these two men look and who they are. And then from there, I am going to try my best to give y'all the best possible scenario of how this case became the most watched, the most, I would say, mesmerizing and shocking case of this era, of that era. So let's jump into it. First, we're going to talk about Kenneth Mianchi. Kenneth Mianchi was born in May the 22nd, 1951, in Rochester, New York, to an alcoholic prostitute who gave him up for an adoption 2 weeks after he was born. He was adopted in August of 1951 by Nicholas Bianchi and his wife Frances Celeonio Bianchi, and was their only child. Bianchi was deeply troubled from a young age, with his adopted mother describing him as a compulsive liar. From the time he could talk, he would often fall into inattentive trance like daydreams, where his eyes would roll back into his head. Based on his symptoms, a physician diagnosed the 5-year-old Bianchi with petit mal seizures. Bianchi was also frequently given physical examinations by doctors because of an involuntary urination problem, causing him a great deal of humiliation. Now, guys, got to remember, back then, there was not a whole lot of psychiatric help for these type of young people back then, okay? So when you had somebody that was waiting the bed or came from an abusive background, people back then just chopped it up as all we have to do is give them love and they'll be fine. But in reality, it was a lot more complicated than that. Beyonce had many behavior problems. He was prone to fits of anger. Francis responded by taking him to a psychiatrist multiple times. But when Beyonce being diagnosed with passive aggressive personality disorder at the age of 10. Now, Beyonce IQ was measured at 116 at the age of 11. Now, that is a pretty impressive IQ for an 11-year-old. 116. That means he was borderline genius if you kind of think about it. He was at least maybe about 9 points away, 5 to 9 points away. But despite having above average intelligence, he was an underachiever and was moved twice from schools due to not getting along with teachers. Francis described him as lazy, and his teachers claimed that he was working below his capacity. Now, after Bianchi's adopted father died suddenly from pneumonia in 1964, the teenage Bianchi refused to cry or show any emotion. That means not a sign of grief, not nothing. Now, after her husband's death, Frances had to work while her son attended high school and was known for keeping Bianchi home from school for long periods of time. Shortly after Bianchi graduated from Gates Chile High School in 1970, he married his high school sweetheart. The union ended after 8 months. Supposedly, she left him without an explanation. Listen, y'all, I'm going to tell you right now. Back then, when women left you that quickly without an explanation, they either saw something or sensed something that scared the hell out of them. Because y'all remember, this was during a generation where a lot of young girls was taught that if you had a chance to leave quietly, leave quietly. Unlike it is today where most women will, get in your face, call you all kind of names, be confrontational. Not all, but some. As an adult, Bianchi dropped out of college after one semester and drifted through a series of menial jobs, finally ending up as a security guard at a jewelry store. This gave him the opportunity to steal valuables, which he often gave to girlfriends or prostitutes to buy their loyalty. Because of his many petty thefts, Bianchi was constantly on the move. Now, this is the story so far of Bianchi. Now we're going to talk about the other guy that was involved in this mess, Angelo Buno. Now, Angelo Buno was born on October the 5th, 1934, in Rochester, New York, to a first-generation Italian immigrants from San Bono. Buno had developed an extensive criminal history, ranging from failure to pay to child support, grand theft auto, assault, and rape. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Buno was an adopted cousin of Kenneth Mianchi, and they started linking up around 1975. And this is when that story begins of how they started hooking up, doing the unthinkable. Now, the Alphabet murders occurred in and around Rochester from 1971 to 1973. There were three young girls, Cameron Cologne, Wanda Wawitz, and Michelle Menaza. They were kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and murdered. Beyonce was never formally charged in these crimes, but he was a suspect because he worked at an ice cream vendor near two of the murder scenes and drove a car similar to a suspicious vehicle spotted near one of the abduction sites. Beyonce had denied any responsibility for these murders. Now, Beyonce moved to Los Angeles, California in 1977, and that's when he started spending time with his older cousin and Francis's nephew, Angelo Buno, who impressed Bianchi with his fancy clothes, jewelry, and talent for getting any woman he wanted and putting them in their place. Before long, they worked together as pimps, and by the late 1977, had escalated to what would become known as the Hillside Strangler murders. Bianchi and Buno had raped and murdered 10 women by the time that people would find out what they were doing by 1979. Now, these is how the murders went down. Let me see how I want to do this here, because there's a lot of information on this case. The first murder that went down was Yolanda Washington. Yolanda Washington happened to mention to Bruno that she always worked on a certain stretch of Sunset Boulevard. When Bianchi and Bruno found out that Deborah Noble had deceived them about the the list, but were unable to find her, they decided to take out their rage on Washington. Her naked body was found in October the 17th, 1977, on Hillside near the Ventura High Freeway, and Detective Frank Serrano of Los Angeles Sheriff's Department was called to the scene. It was determined that the corpse was cleaned before being dumped. Faint marks were visible around the necks, wrists, and ankles, where a rope had been used and the victim had been raped. Then there was the second murder. A couple of weeks later, Judith Mueller. On November the 1st, 1977, police were called to Alta Terrace Drive in La Crestina, a neighborhood 12 miles north of downtown Los Angeles, where the body of a teenage girl was found naked, faced up on a parkway in a middle-class residential area. The homeowner had covered her with a tarp in the early morning hours to prevent the neighborhood children from viewing her on her way to school. Mm, mm, mm. Ligature marks were on her neck, wrists, and ankles, indicating the police that she was bound and strangled. The body had been dumped, indicated she was killed elsewhere. Detective Sarano also found a small piece of light-colored fluff on her eyelids and saved it for the forensic experts. A coroner's report further detailed that she had been raped and sodomized. The girl, who was described as being small and thin, weighed about 90 pounds and appearing to be about 16 years old, was eventually identified as 15-year-old Judith Mueller, a former student of Hollywood High School, runaway and occasional sex worker. Now, guys, before I get further into the case, back then in the 70s, it was always classified when a young girl ran away, or even a young boy, if they was missing, they always classified them as runaways. It was just something that was commonplace. So you could have somebody who actually was in danger, but you couldn't prove it because the police were taught and trained to classify every teenager as a runaway. I mean, that's from 13 on up. So that's why a lot of these children never got found properly or were ever saved. Now, when it comes to 90 pounds, that was like the average weight for little girls back then that was teenagers. You know, a lot of these girls back in the 70s were all about trying to be slender. So you had them between 90 to 130 at the most. Unlike today, that would be considered extra small weight. I mean, the average young girl today in a teenage years are running between 145 to 165. So yeah, that was just how it was back then. Just want to get that as a side note. Yes, it is, Paul Jimenez. It is very dangerous now for a child to run away. In fact, you go to the cops now and tell them that your child is missing. You getting Amber Alerts. You getting the whole nine. You getting everything. Posters, the whole freaking nine. They is not playing. Now, Miller was last seen on October 31st, 1977, talking to a man driving a large two-tone sedan on Sunset Boulevard near to Carney's Express Limited. The Strangler told her they were undercover police officers, handcuffed her, and took her to Bono's auto upholstery shop at 703 East Colorado Street in Glendale, where she was murdered. Imagine that, man. Imagine that. Lisa Caston. Now, this is 5 days later. On November the 6th, 1977, the nude body of another woman was discovered near the Chevy Chase Country Club in Glendale. Like Miller. Oh, there's both of them, bro. Both of the guys in the pictures are stranglers. They're adopted cousins. They thought it was just one strangler. It was two. This is where you got a double serial killer, like a tag team serial killer matchup. Get back to the story. So 5 days later, on November 6, 1977, the nude body of another woman was discovered near the Chevy Chase Country Club in Glendale. Like Miller, she bore 5 points, which was a neck, wrist, and ankle ligature marks, and of having been strangled and brutally raped, but not sodomized. The woman was identified as 21-year-old waitress Alyssa Teresa Lisa Caston, who was last seen leaving the restaurant when she worked the night before her body was discovered. Caston was also a professional dancer for the all-female dance troupe, the LA Knockers, and unlike the two previous victims, she was not a prostitute, a drug user, or a runaway. The stranglers followed Caston as she was seen driving home from work, pulled her over on the street she lived on, presented a fake police badge, and told her they were detectives. They then handcuffed her and told her they needed to take her in for questioning. See, this is how a lot of these murders were taking place. See, these guys, they wasn't dummies. They were pretty smart in their head. They had a game plan. They felt like if we played like we were undercover cops, we could go out here and get these women. Now, this was actually, it was around 1980 when they had the trial, I want to say. But I'm getting to that point in a minute. I just want to make sure that y'all actually get the information of all the murders they did. Now, moving right along, we're going to go to the aborted abduction of Catherine Lorne Baker. Now, at some point in early 1977, the two men approached 24-year-old Catherine Lorne Baker, the daughter of actor Peter Lorre, famous for his role as a serial killer in Fritz Lang film M. I think I heard about this dude because I think that film M was real popular back then. And the intent of abducting and killing her. However, when they found a picture of her sitting on her father's lap among her identification, they let her go without incident, fearing the murder of a celebrity's child may attract an unusual high amount of police and press attention. Laura did not realize who the men were until they were arrested, at which point she recalled the two men flashing LA police badges had approached her in the past. So they thought they were smart now. They thought they were real smart. Dolores Cepeda and Sonia Johnson. Now, on Sunday, November 13th, 1977, two girls, 12-year-old Dolores Ann Dolly Cepeda and 14-year-old Sonia Marie Johnson, boarded an RTD bus in front of the Eagle Rock Plaza on Colorado Boulevard and headed home. The last time they were seen was getting off the bus on York Boulevard and in Avenue 46 in Avenue 46 and approaching the two-tone sedan, which reportedly had two men inside. Their two corpses were found by a 9-year-old boy who had been treasure hunting in a trash heap on a hillside near Dodger Stadium on November the 20th. Both of the girls' bodies had already begun to decompose. It was determined they had been strangled and raped. Next one. Christina Weckler. Now this is all happening, y'all, in a couple of weeks span. These guys was not even letting it. They were on a run. They would not even chill with this. They just kept going. They was giving themselves like maybe a week or a couple of days now. Earlier that same day, November 20th, 1977, hikers found the naked body of 20-year-old Christina Weckler, a quiet honor student in the Art Center College of Design, deemed by Detective Bob Grogan of the Los Angeles Police Department to be a loving and serious young woman who should have had a bright future ahead of her. On a hillside between Glendale and Eagle Rock, when found by Grogan, ligature marks were on her wrists, ankles, and neck, and when he turned her over, bruises on her breast were obvious, and blood oozed from her rectum. Unlike the first three victims, there were two puncture arms on her arms, but no sign of the needle tracks that indicated a drug addict. It was later revealed that Weckler had been injected with Windex, a hard surface cleaner. Yeah, you was 11 years old? Man, you telling your age tonight. My man said, I was 11 years old when that went down. Yeah, you telling your age, bro. I wasn't even born yet when that shit went down. Not at all. Was not even born yet. So, now, the next one. On November 23rd, 1977, the badly decomposed body. Oh, yeah, they were in Cali, man. This is all in Cali, California. On November 23rd, 1977, the badly decomposing body of 28-year-old Evelyn Jane King, an aspiring actress who had gone missing on November 9th, was discovered in bushes near the Los Feliz off-ramp of the Golden State Freeway. The severity of the decomposition prevented determination as to whether she had been raped or tortured, but she had been strangled like the others. In the response, authorities created a task force initially composed of 30 officers from the LAPD, the sheriff's department, and the Glendale Police Department to catch the predator now dubbed the Hillside uh, Strangler. All right, thank you for correcting me, Los Felix. Yeah, I appreciate that. They said Los Feliz, but it's Los Felix. Okay. Hey, thanks for correcting me because y'all from that area. I'm going back in these comments right quick before I go to the next victim. It was my man said, I met that guy. Which guy did you met? You met one of the killers for real? I gotta hear about this, man. Like, did you met him as in you knew him as a neighbor, or you met him as in, you just saw him in passing or something? Or, just an acquaintance. That's interesting. Oh, okay, I got you. I got you. Oh, okay. So they were trying to solicit you. Okay, I got you now. Okay, I get what you're saying. Well, thank God you didn't, because these guys is crazy. Now, the next victim, Lorne Wagner, on November 29, 1977. This has all happened 6 days later. Police found the body of 18-year-old Lauren Ray Wagner, a business student who lived with her parents in the San Francisco Valley, in the hills around Los Angeles, Mount Washington. She had ligature marks on her neck, ankles, and wrists. There were also burn marks on her hands, indicating she was tortured. Lauren's parents had expected her to come home before midnight, and the next morning, when they found her car parked across the street with the door ajar, her father questioned the neighbors. He found that the woman who lived in the house where Lauren's car had been parked saw her abduction. The woman stated that she saw two men. One was tall and young, the other was older and shorter with bushy hair. She also stated that she heard Wagner cry out, "You won't get away with this," during her abduction. Man, now y'all got to understand something too. Uh when back in the day too, if you wound up missing and you was over the age of 18, they did not immediately put out a missing person on you in most of the 50 states, okay? They usually had a rule where back then it wasn't even 48 hours. I think it was something like it had to be almost a week before they even decided to even look for you. So back in the 70s, that's why a lot of people got away with a lot of these crimes as long as they did. Because back then, the severity, the sense of urgency just wasn't there. Because back then, people left and started a new life all the time. I mean, it was just quite normal. You had women who would leave their whole family and start a new one. And exactly, a lot of people hitchhike because back then that's how people got around. They hitchhike. That was the thing, you know. And in those days, the hitchhiking didn't get dangerous until the 70s, really. Because in the 60s, a lot of people hitchhiked. Even in the 50s, you didn't have to worry about that. I mean, the worst thing you would have to worry about is some guy trying to, you know, hit on you as a woman or violate you. But even then they were pretty scared because all that it took for you as a woman was to go and report it, and you're screwed. And if you was a black hitchhiker, you didn't really get picked up like that unless it was a traveling black family or something, being nice enough to take you from where you had to go. But after that, this is what it was back then. Like I said, it didn't get bad until the 70s. That's when these new school killers was like, yo, I could kill this person and nobody never found him. In Cali, the train. Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, we're going to go to the next young lady that was found. Now, this happened again a couple of weeks. On December the 14th, 1977, the body of 17-year-old sex worker Kimberly Diane Martin, which was naked and showed signs of torture, was found on a deserted lot near Los Angeles City Hall. Martin had previously joined a call girl agency because she feared exposing herself on the streets with the strangler on the loose. The killers happened to place a call to her agency from a Hollywood public library payphone. and she was the call girl who was dispatched it. When the police investigated the apartment she had been dispatched it to, they found it vacant and broken into. I know y'all probably gonna be shocked, y'all young folks, saying, why wasn't they able to stop these people? Because of all of these crimes that I'm reporting. And again, if y'all like what I'm doing and y'all like this story, please like and share it. Let me tell you about old school back in the day. And I'm going by what I was told by older folks. And if I'm correct, all the older folks that follow me that was born in that time, please definitely give me, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm not. I was told back then that people were able to be easily use payphones because you would have to actually call the switchboard, and from the switchboard you would actually have to give them time to give you a recording that was on tape. And I heard that the tape of those recordings didn't keep it that long. They had a certain time frame and they got rid of it. So back then you could commit a crime, call on the payphone, and that was it. And there wasn't no cameras out like back then. I mean, CCTV didn't get hot till like in the early 80s. And that was because, like they said, downtown in the city area, people started getting robbed. So I'm just making sure I'm right so far. Okay. So I am right. All right. I'm making sure because I know there's a lot of people older than me that knew about those times. So yeah, that's why serial killers would go on forever before you could catch them. I mean, that's why the mob was able to work without getting caught, baby. It was hard back then to catch somebody. Real hard. Oh, and another note too, back in the day that I also heard. I heard that you could hear other people's conversation when you made a call. Cause I remember that whenever I was in the early 90s when I was growing up and in the late 80s. Because I remember that my grandmother and me would make a call sometimes and we could hear somebody else's conversation. It'd be a little faint, but if you turn the volume up just enough, you can hear the other conversation. That's how they found out somebody was doing a murder plot one time. The phones, man. The party line. That's right. That's what they used to call it. The party line. Crossing up. Popcorn. I even heard somebody doing the nasty on one of those too. Wasn't good. Oh man, those was the crazy days. Now you hear something like that, you be like, yo, my phone tap. Crazy times, guys. Crazy times. Now, this time they waited a couple of months for the next murder. Cindy Hudspeth. The body of the final Hillside Strangler victim was discovered in Los Angeles on February 17th, 1978, when a helicopter pilot spotted an orange Datsun abandoned midway down a cliff on the Angeles Crest Highway. Police responded to the scene and discovered the nude body of the car's owner, 20-year-old Cindy Lee Hudspeth, a student and part-time waitress, in the trunk. Her corpse again showed ligature marks, and she had been raped and tortured. She had been strangled and her body placed in the trunk of a car, which was then pushed off the cliff. Hudspeth's murder had initially been unplanned. Bianchi had arrived at Bono's upholstery shop at closing time on February 16th to discover Hudspeth in the company of Bruno, discussing upholstery work. She wished him to perform on her car. The two men had a private discussion, opting to make her the next victim. Why is it every time these serial killers get all complacent, they always mess up on the last killing? It's like that last killing was like a quick thing. Yeah, you know what, man? She's in here. Yeah, let's go do a murder. All right, let's do it. The hell? They should have known that wasn't gonna fly. They said right there. They might as well would have called the police on that one. So now let's talk about the investigation and how the trial came up the way it was. So in January 1979, after extensive investigation, police charged Bianchi and Bono with the crimes. They said extensive investigation. They was not playing. Now, y'all already know that when he first got arrested, he had a nerve to tell everybody that he was not guilty. He was pleading by reason of insanity. And oh yeah, his defense was it wasn't him. He had another person in his body named Stephen Walker. Guys, y'all know good and damn well nobody's not gonna believe reason of insanity and you got a multi-personality disorder. If you can still distinguish right from wrong, that don't work anymore, man. That didn't even work back then. Oh man. Let's talk about how that played out. So now Bianchi had fled to Bellingham, Washington, where he was soon arrested by Bellingham Police Department for raping and murdering two women he had lured to a home for a house sitting job. Man, this dude just could not stop, man. That Bianchi guy was just crazy. Now, Bianchi attempted to set up an insanity defense, like I said before, and that he, had that multiple personality. So, court psychologist, notable Dr. Martin Orne, observed Bianchi and found that he was faking. So, that's when that fell apart. Y'all got to understand something. When a case like this, and that's even today, you can't go out and say, "Oh yeah, I got a multiple personality disorder. I'm insane." That don't work anymore because these psychiatrists, they're pretty smart. They'll watch you. They observe you. They'll look at your mannerisms. They'll look at how you interact with other people on the phone. They look at everything. And if you can't keep that charade up, and you know you can't because we all human, all it takes is one bit of common sense to come out. Oh yeah, that fool ain't crazy. That's a wrap. It's a risky thing to do. I don't know why people do it. It just don't work. Now, people thinking that he had this idea because he had seen the film Sybil, and it was about a schizophrenic suffering from multiple personalities triggered by childhood abuse. He convinced a few expert psychiatrists that he indeed suffered from multi-personal disorder, but he just couldn't do that main one, which was Martin Orne. Now, when Orne mentioned to Bianchi that in genuine cases of the disorder there tends to be three or more personalities, Bianchi promptly created another alias, Billy. Orne proved that Bianchi lied about having multiple personalities to avoid being prosecuted, and tested Bianchi by introducing him to his lawyer who was not present. Bianchi interacted with the imaginary lawyer. Orne then brought in his real lawyer, which flustered Bianchi and claimed that the imaginary lawyer vanished. Got it with the old okey doke trick. Hey, your lawyer's in the room. Oh yeah, yeah. My lawyer's in the room. If he would have said, "Nah, man, that ain't no lawyer. Quit trying to play with me. This is so and so," he probably would have sold him with, "Oh, okay, he really is crazy." But he playing along with old dude. Dude knew right then, yeah, this is a damn jackass. Oh man. So he eventually pled guilty in order to avoid a death penalty in Washington state. Now, they also realized with Bianchi that he came across with the name Stephen Walker from a student whose identity Bianchi had previously attempted to steal for the purpose of fraudulently practicing psychology. And then he had a small library of books in Bianchi home on topics of modern psychology, further indicating his ability to fake the disorder. So, see, he already had it planned out. He already knew, hey, if I get caught, I'm going to plead insanity. I'm going to go to a nut house, and I'll be out in a couple years, and I go do this again. See, he already, that was his defense. This dude was already, thought he was smart. Once his claim was subject to this scrutiny, Bianchi eventually admitted that he'd been faking the disorder. He eventually was diagnosed with antisocial uh, personality disorder with sexual sadism. Let me tell you what antisocial uh, disorder means with sexual sadism. And this was things now that can be treated, but they didn't know anything that much about it back then. These are people who do not socialize with everyday people. They're very shy, withdrawn, very soft spoken, and when they do talk about things, it's very awkward. They talk about very awkward, off the wall subjects. And they have with that sexual sadism, they look at a lot of crazy stuff. When I'm talking about crazy stuff, I'm not talking about just BDSM. Nah, I'm talking about that extreme, that snuff film stuff, extreme pain, all that mess. The stuff that would make me and you and regular people be like, oh no, you crazy as hell. But that's what they into. And when you get with people or deal with people like that, that they know they're not normal, and they feel like the only way they can get people to do what they say is invoking fear, because fear is what drives that sexual sadism. That what drives that makes them say, "Oh yeah, let's do this." Yeah, yeah. Not the type of people you want to bring home to mom or dad. Now we're gonna talk about what Bruno defense was, the cousin. So while this is going on, when they call Angelo, this is what Angelo did. Now the legal case against Bruno was basically largely upon Beyonce's testimony. Now, when they decided that Beyonce was unreliable and an uncooperative witness, the case original prosecutors from the district attorney John Van D. Camp's office was going to dismiss all charges against Buno and set him free. But the presiding judge, Ronald M. George, refused to release Buno and reassign the case to a California Attorney General, George Demekian's office. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Now, they did that because he was an unreliable witness. So we're going to get right back to Buno because his trial is a little bit more longer. So let me tell you the sentencing part of what happened to old Kenny boy in the end of his situation. Since he couldn't testify against his cousin because he wasn't reliable. Let me get back here. Give me 1 second. I had lost my place. So in the end, after that happened, because he couldn't be cooperative, Bianchi's efforts were unsuccessful, and he was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. Now, in 1980, uh, while he was sentenced life imprisonment, old Beyonce had the nerve to begin a relationship with a woman named Veronica Compton, a woman he had met while in prison. During this trial, she testified for the defense, telling the jury a false, vague tale about the crimes in an attempt to exculpate Bianchi. She also admitted to wanting to buy a mortuary with another convicted murderer for the purpose of necrophilia. She was later convicted in prison for attempting to strangle a woman she had lured to a hotel in an attempt to convince authorities that the Hillside Strangler was still on the loose. I remember y'all remember that. I remember this too. Now, I don't remember it, but I heard about it when I got older. Beyonce allegedly had given her some semen during a prison visit for her to use in order to make it look like a rape or murder convicted by the Strangler. Now, in 1992, Beyonce sued Catherine Yearwood for $8.5 million for having an image of his face depicted on a trading card. He claimed his face was his trademark. The judge dismissed the case, that ruling that if Beyonce had been using his face as a trademark when he was killing women, he would not have tried to hide it from the police. Oh, that's hilarious. Beyonce is serving his sentence at Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla, Washington. He has been denied parole on August 18, 2010 by the state board in Sacramento. but he will be eligible for parole again in 2025. Let's pray that in 2025, the way the world is going, that by 2024 we have a real person in charge of this country to stop this damn wazoo from getting out. I'm hoping and praying that really does happen. But you know how that goes with that. Now, while we got the story about Kenneth, Angelo had a little bit weird like ending. So when his case got reassigned, Bono's trial will become the longest in American uh, legal history, lasting from November 1981 until November 1983. Now, during the trial, Beyonce, in exchange for a lot of sentence, tried to testify against his own cousin, adopted cousin. Now, the jury convicted Bono on the 9 counts of murder and sentenced him to life imprisonment, with the judge commenting that he felt a death sentence would have been the appropriate punishment. Now, this is what happened after he got sentenced. In 1986, Bruno married Christine Kizuka, a mother of three and a supervisor at the California State Employment Development Department. Ain't that something, guys? These men always find these women to marry while they in jail. I could never understand that shit. He died of a heart attack in September 2002. His body was cremated. Then there was more tragedy connected to Buno. In 2007, Buno's grandson, Christopher Buno, committed suicide shortly after shooting his grandmother, Mary Costello, in the head. Costello was at one time married to Buno and had 5 children with him, including Chris' father. Chris Buno was unaware of his grandfather's true identity until 2005. Sad, man. But that is the case of the Hillside Strangler case. I chose this case because it made me think about all the things that are coming to light now, and people keep saying about how um the police don't do their job, or have make excuses about this, that, and the third. I think that people need to be reminded that before all this technology came into play, there was a time that police officers had to do everything manually. There wasn't no computers to search things up with. There wasn't no DNA tracker. All you had was people's word and eyewitnesses and old school fingerprints. And we have already seen that people can damn near have a fingerprint just almost identical. So it was a rough time, and we had a lot of serial killers between the 70s and the 80s. I mean, you think about so many serial killers that are coming to light every week on Google or through YouTube. I mean, hell, it seemed like every time I listen to YouTube Cold Case, there was a serial killer that we knew nothing about. Because, like my man, like one of the people were saying in the chats, you had people hitchhiking all the time in the US of A, and when they hitchhike, the first thing they did was grab the first thing smoking. So that's why a lot of these deaths are out here. So I'm going to provide y'all sometime next week with another case. Like I said, I may work on what happened with the cult leader, with that lady that recently got arrested in Georgia for killing a newborn baby. I don't know too much of that story about her cult, but I'm going to look into it and find out what it is and get more insight. So if y'all like this, go ahead on, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Please share this. Please, guys, donate to your boy Cause, man. Let's keep the channel alive. The $5 challenge. We definitely need it. Also, too, donate to my wife's GoFundMe. She still got health problems. We still trying to make it. Any little bit will help. I know you probably gonna ask me, have anybody donated? Unfortunately, no, because I guess people got a hard time. I don't judge nobody. Things are hard on everyone. So, like I said, if you can donate, great. If you can't, I understand. So I'm gonna wrap this bad boy up. Thank y'all again. I'm about to come back with some of y'all favorite political commentary. Love you guys.